Just because we say, oh, mirrorless is new technology, doesn't automatically mean all the mirrorless cameras are better than all the digital single lens reflex cameras. It doesn't mean that. You just have to know your equipment well. Hi guys, how are you? I hope you're doing really good. Welcome back to part 2 of us thinking through whether to transition from the DSLR camera to the mirrorless cameras. And once again, I want to remind you that this was one of the most asked questions following my sharing of a video about the difference between the digital single lens reflex cameras and the mirrorless cameras. And today we're diving into part B of a question that was raised: should this person give up their Canon 5D Mark IV for the mirrorless camera? And I want to answer these questions by giving us 4 thinking points that we can think through to help us make that decision to transition or otherwise. This video is also for you if you are at the start of your career and you're wondering whether you should invest in a mirrorless camera as your first piece of equipment, or you should start with a digital single lens reflex camera. I've thought about this, and if I would summarize it for someone, it should come down to 4 things. 1 is in regard to budget. Number 2, the capability of the camera. Number 3, your needs as a photographer, which I want to combine with number 4, that is to do with the convenience that this equipment brings you as a photographer. So let's start with budget. What budget do you have available for you to invest in equipment currently? The one thing I want to firstly make clear is, you know how there is the digital single lens reflex cameras, which, like in the last video, we use the 6D to represent them. I'll do the same thing here too for consistency. Like, you have these cameras and they have a whole wide selection in their family of cameras. They have a wide selection of cameras from as far as the entry level, the amateur level, the mid-professional and the professional level. The same way you have that wide selection in the digital single lens reflex cameras, you also have the same wide selection in the mirrorless cameras. You have entry-level cameras in the mirrorless. You have the amateur level cameras in the mirrorless. You have the mid-professional and the professional. The point I'm trying to make is, for both the mirrorless and the digital single lens reflex cameras, you have all these levels of camera, which means that there is a camera in this family which is a professional camera that could be doing better than another camera in the mirrorless family that is actually an amateur or entry-level camera. So the budget you have, can it afford you an entry-level camera, an amateur-level camera, or mid-professional or professional camera? When I say amateur, please don't take it the wrong way. It's just a word that is used in categorizing levels of cameras, but it does not mean it's not bad. I know the connotation around it might be bad, but trust me, just trust me. Trust me, it's not bad. In the camera tech space, it's not bad. So the budget that you have available, what can it afford you right now? Can it afford you an entry-level camera, a mid-level camera, a professional camera? What can it afford you? So if it can afford you, let's say, an entry-level camera, look at the entry-level cameras in both the digital single lens reflex family and the mirrorless family. In which of the 2 families are you able to afford an entry-level camera with your budget? When you figure that out, then go ahead and look at the specifications of the 2 different cameras in the family. So you have an entry-level camera in the DSLR family, you have an entry-level camera in the mirrorless family. Compare the 2. One website that I like going to do that is called Camera Decision. I'm going to link it down below. You can go there, and then after you figured out that, okay, my budget can afford me, let's say, an entry-level camera, or after you figure out, oh, my budget can afford me, let's say, a Canon 1100, go to the Canon website and figure out which level does it belong to. Is it entry level? Is it mid level? That kind of thing. When you figure that out, then go to the mirrorless cameras and figure out what other cameras are available in that level of cameras. And then go to Camera Decision and compare that. When you go to Camera Decision, it's very self-explanatory. Like, the steps are there, they'll guide you, put this here, and then, you know, they'll show you all the specifications. There are many things that you can look at, but a few of the things that you can look at is how many, for example, megapixels. This one have how many megapixels, and the other one have. So compare the specifications. Basically, now we're talking about capabilities of the camera. So we're going into point number 2 before I talked about. 1 was budget, 2 was the capabilities of the camera. And then number 2 in terms of capabilities of the camera is the same way we have full frame cameras and crop sensor cameras in the digital single lens reflex cameras. We also have full frame cameras and crop sensor cameras in the mirrorless cameras. So it's very possible, for example, the gentleman who asked this question has a 5D Mark IV, which is a full frame camera in the digital single lens reflex cameras. You might find that you're giving up a full frame camera in the digital single lens reflex cameras for a crop sensor camera in the mirrorless cameras. Which brings me back to your needs as a photographer, which is point number 3. What are your needs as a photographer? Your needs have to do with the type of photography that you do. For example, in my case, I'm a documentary photographer. I'm traveling a lot. One of the things that made me make the decision to go mirrorless for me was the lightweight. Because I'm a girl, yeah, I may be doing cameras, but I really do love soft life. So yes, I'm a girl and in the field a lot, and the situations that you get to and the car stops there, then you have to walk with your backpack. So this is heavier than this. So one of the most influencing decisions, for example, was in terms of convenience, like the weight. So you might find that you're a studio photographer and you don't carry your camera anywhere. It sits on a table, a client walks in, you take their pictures, you put it back on the table. You're never carrying it anywhere, and you have a 5D Mark IV, which is doing a very good job. I would say it may be good to eventually cross over to a mirrorless someday, but it should not put you on pressure now. If, for example, going back to point number 1, you do not have the budget for it currently. I would rather you continue making money with your 5D Mark IV for some time, make the money, and then when you have enough to even buy, let's say, a professional level mirrorless camera, and even still have someone to spare, like, it should not be pressure. Then you can always transition and buy one. But the thing, there's so much to dissect in regard to the transition, or whether you should transition or not. But the point I'm trying to make is there should be no pressure to transition. There should be knowledge about, number 1, what's your budget currently? Number 2, what are the capabilities of a camera you have currently? And if you have money to buy a mirrorless camera, the one that you want to buy in the mirrorless family, what are its capabilities in comparison to your DSLR? And then number 3, what are your needs as a photographer? On a whole, because I've used both, I do understand that, let's say, the mirrorless makes life much easier. The images just have this almost cinematic look and all, especially because they're using like an electronic recording system. So there is less distortion in terms of recording the light entering your camera. So in most cases, what you see on camera is what you're going to get at the end. Unlike in the digital single lens reflex cameras, whereby sometimes what you may see is not what you get on your computer, because there's distortion happening with all of those mirrors, like we described in the video up here. So sometimes you may end up with a picture whereby there are more highlights in the picture than you saw in your viewfinder, things like that. But there's nothing that mastering your settings cannot help you survive with your digital single lens reflex cameras. So should you transition or should you not transition? 1, what's the budget available to you? Number 2, what are the capabilities of the DSLR you currently have? So look at which mirrorless camera you can afford with the current budget you have and compare its capabilities with the capabilities of your current digital single lens reflex camera. If your digital single lens camera is likely to do a better job, I would say do some research about which better mirrorless camera you can purchase, and then find out the budget for it and give yourself the grace and time to raise the money for it. Number 3 is, what are your needs, current needs as a photographer? Do you really need a mirrorless camera right now and today? Or could it be something that you're investing in 2-3 years time, especially if you have a good DSLR camera that is still currently working for you? So yes, eventually you could cross over. I would say we shall maybe all cross over eventually, you know. For example, there's no one using a film camera right now. The world crossed over. So eventually I do believe that we shall cross over. One thing I do not like is putting people on pressure, which happens a lot in the industry, where especially beginner photographers will be put on pressure to do things they cannot afford, and they will do them because there's no knowledge available. That's one of the reasons I do these videos, to make knowledge available. If there is a beginner photographer out there, they should not die alone and spend all their hard-earned savings trying to purchase this crazy mirrorless camera because someone told them, man, mirrorless. It is not a must. It comes down to knowledge, understanding your equipment, and making the right decisions for you. Because when you know better, then you do better. So I hope you'll do better. Bye.